Hello and good morning, everyone. I hope you all enjoyed the keynote and you are as excited as me about the new features that they announced. So I think that's some really cool stuff and also things that we are really looking for to drive more into this data culture direction. So welcome to the session, Altering Data Preparation to Deliver Faster Reporting at Siemens. I'm Tony Adam. I'm a Global Business Improvement Manager at Siemens Gas and Power. And it's quite interesting how I got here. So actually, this is an Alteryx session. So I was approached by Alteryx to showcase our use case where we use Alteryx for the data preparation and Tableau for the visualization. So it's a pretty good fit for this conference. And so this is how I got here. And during my presentation, I would like you to think about the challenges that you might have in your business, which might be similar to what I present, and whether Alteryx would be a solution for you to tackle those challenges and to find good solutions to present your data. So how are we going to do this? First, I want to give you some context on the use case, which is going to be productivity management at Siemens. Then, of course, we'll have a look at the Tableau dashboards that we are using, or at least a few of them. And then we come to the data preparation side, and this is where Alteryx comes into play. So I'll give a brief introduction to Alteryx in general. Then we'll look at a few specifics, how we use Alteryx, or special parts of Alteryx. And this is the automated data preparation. And then we look at Alteryx in Siemens, so just very briefly, what are we doing at the moment and where do we want to go? And in the end, you'll have the chance to ask questions, and I'll answer them as good as I can. So my background is in mechanical engineering, so I'm not an IT guy, I'm not a BI specialist. So keep that in mind for your questions, please. So, we're talking about Siemens, and as you might know, Siemens was founded here in Berlin back in 1847. So it's quite an old company with a long history. And in fiscal year 18, we had around 83 billion in revenue, and we have a global workforce of around 380,000 people. So it's quite big. And during that long history, Siemens went through a row of constant innovations and also portfolio adjustments. And at the recent Siemens Global Capital Market Day, there was a next change announced that the gas and power business will have a spin-off together with parts of the Siemens Gamesa Renewable Energies, and that we want to create a unique energy and power company. And we don't have to look at all the details of the slides because it's not important for this session today, but we want to look at one specific thing. So down there we see that we have ambitious targets for our EBITDA margin. So EBITDA is the earnings before interest, taxes, and amortization. And at the moment we're at around 4%, but we want to go to 8 to 12%. So EBITDA, well, if you break it down a little, basically comes back to profit. And profit can be watched at this. So if we look at our profit that we had in the previous year over there, we have a few factors that change this profit. So we have volume or digression, so we sell more or less. We have price changes. The customers are not willing to pay the same prices for the goods that we offer. And then we have cost changes. Labor costs usually go up. And on the right side, we have our profit that we want to reach this year. And this usually, there's a gap. And this gap has to be filled with productivity. So what is productivity? Productivity is basically creating the same output with less resources or creating more output with the same resources. And that's why, because this productivity is really important to close the profit gap, we set up a system at Siemens which is called PUMA. So it's a pretty stupid German abbreviation, but it's basically for productivity, sales stimulation, material and asset optimization. So we're looking into all this. And it's Siemens-wide, so the whole corporate uses it. And because it's important for my use case, I want to go into one detail of this, and this is the so-called degrees of implementation. This we introduced to increase the transparency of the action implementation, and we start with DI1, which is where we define a goal. So, and the goal is basically derived from the gap in the profit bridge. So this sets our goal. Then, of course, we have to come up with ideas for actions that increase our productivity. So this is DI2. And then, of course, we have to go into the implementation. And there we have 3 steps. So DI3, we have a concrete implementation plan and a good estimate of the impact that we can achieve. Then we have DI4, where the action is completely implemented. And then DI5, where we see the first impact in the profit. So we see the financial impact. And so try to remember this, not all the details, but we'll come back to it. So we set up this program, well, it's running for quite a while, but back in fiscal year 16, we started to put more emphasis on this. And we started to do visualization for it. And back then, I wasn't introduced to Tableau, so we went the old school way and created ThinkCell charts in PowerPoint, which is totally static, and today everyone's laughing about it. But still, some people are still doing it, so we shouldn't laugh too loud. But fortunately, in fiscal year 17, we were introduced to Tableau. So we brought this reporting to Tableau, and that made it much more dynamic. So we could use the filters to go into regional details and stuff like this. And this transparency was already a big boost for our program, because the transparency just created more accountability, which is really important. And what else we achieved, instead of just like having a quarterly reporting in PowerPoint, which then went into some drawer and no one ever looked at it, with the Tableau dashboards, we had them always present, so we could create a continuous discussion on the topic of productivity. So there are the benefits of Tableau, just to have it transparent and visible to everyone. Yeah, and over the time, we developed those dashboards further, and we went to about 2 weekly updates that we have the information available. And yes, I want to show some of the dashboards, and don't be shocked that this looks pretty boring compared to the stuff that we saw in the sports visits or something. But I think the business dashboards don't have to be fancy, they just have to make sense, and people need to understand them easily. So the dashboard itself is not interesting, but I want to highlight the targets that we set up here. So this is our target overview, and we have a so-called target matrix, where on the one hand we have the regions, and on the other hand we have the central functions. And by setting the targets up like that, we foster the communication and the collaboration between the regions who are doing most of the business and the central functions who are there to support them. So setting up a target matrix like this has a great benefit to foster collaboration, and since people are assigned targets in these specific areas here, they just, everyone wants to achieve their individual target, and if you accumulate that, then we can make sure that we reach our overall target. So usually we come up a bit higher than what we are shooting for. And then let's jump to our most important dashboard. One important note, so all the data is randomized. As you can see with the text here, it doesn't make much sense anymore. And also all the numbers are randomized. And of course, I did that with Alteryx because it was quite a big data set. And Alteryx was also for that quite a nice tool. So what do we have here? The main chart, this is our so-called DI ramp up, and there we come back to the degrees of implementation that I just introduced to you. So we see here our DI0, the orange target line, so this is the goal that we defined. And then we follow both the volume and the development of the DI stages throughout the fiscal year. So Siemens fiscal year starts in October, and back then, in this randomized data, we had a forecast volume of around 41 million, and most of it was in DI2, DI3, and DI4. And as we go through the year, we see that additional improvement actions were added, so the overall volume rose. And the other thing that we can see, we translate more and more of the lighter blue, which refers to the lower DI stages, into DI5, where we really hit the bottom line with all our measures. So we can see at the end of the fiscal year, we are hitting the bottom line with all the actions, and in that data set, we would overachieve our target by around 17%. And yeah, if we look into one detail now, we have the filters for the regions here and also for the central functions. And if we jump into the view for region Europe, which is REU, we see the whole dashboard changes. Of course, you're used to that when you're using Tableau. And but what we see here is interesting because they started into the year with a much bigger forecast. And then they actually went down and yeah, then a little up again. Additionally, we have tooltips which provide further information, so to really make the content transparent. But coming back to the change in forecast, so the volume that we see in the bars, people want to know, okay, what changed there? And that's why we created an additional dashboard, which is called Change in Forecast, where we show exactly that. So here we have a nice overview comparing month to month on what changed and what the impact was, and sorted by the biggest absolute impact. So this helps people to quickly identify what changed from one set or from one month to another, and to see yeah, the impact of new measures. So the upper part is just showing that one month by month, and then you have an aggregated view at the bottom where you see new measures, ongoing measures with increased forecast, ongoing measures with decreased forecast, or discarded measures. And so the decline in the forecast could, for example, be explained by measures that were discarded because they just didn't make it into the next DI level, because the idea didn't prove to be useful or helpful, or stuff like this. So to summarize this, we have for this productivity reporting 8 dashboards in total, and for that we need 3 different data sources or data extracts, and that is due to the different data structure that we need for each of those dashboards. So we have the standard dashboards where we need 1 row per action and only the latest status. This is quite straightforward. Then we have the change in forecast dashboard where we have also 1 row per action, but we need all the data from the past. So this looks a bit different. And then we have the most important thing, the DI ramp up. So if we look at the normal data structure, that looks like this, where we just show the impact in the end. So this measure has a total forecast of 12,500, and the impact is distributed over the last 5 months of the year. But if we try to put that into Tableau, it was, even if we accumulate it would just show us the ramp up in the last few months. But what we want to achieve is the view above. So for that, we need to have a data structure that looks like this. So in the beginning, we have the measure in DI2. So the idea was created, then the measure moves to DI3, then to DI4, and then there is still a bit of the delay, so the measure is implemented, but for accounting delay or whatever, the real impact to the bottom line just happens in May. And in May, it slowly accumulates until in September we have the full impact. And with that kind of data structure, we can create a dashboard like you see on top. So you see that already with that, there is quite some data preparation required to prepare the data to show those dashboards. And this was exactly where we struggled. So we had a very manual process for this. I had to download the data from our PUMA database as an Excel export, of course. Then I had to run various macros in more than one Excel file to get the data together. And in the end, I had to open Tableau, refresh the data extract, and then upload it to our Tableau server again. So this was all, manual steps. With manual steps, you always have errors in the process. And I was really annoyed by my VBA macros, which I wrote myself, but like after a year, when I had to do updates, it was even for myself almost impossible to maintain this code with more than 3,000 lines of code. So lots of difficulties, and I found myself in Excel hell. And I was really happy that a colleague of mine discovered Alteryx, because Alteryx finally gave us a solution to get out of Excel hell. And let's have a quick look into what Alteryx is. So it's a self-service for data analytics and much more, but I'll leave the much more to the experts from Alteryx, so you can visit them in the booth in the data village right in the center. So go to them and ask them for all the details. I'll just give a brief introduction. So it's a self-service analytics platform which makes it really easy to connect of all kinds of data sources. Databases, SAP HANA, Excel files, XML files, so everything that you can imagine. Then you can very easily use those data sources to prep and blend them within Alteryx, and you only have to do this once because you also create a workflow which is repeatable, and then you can do it over and over. The data changes, your workflow stays the same, and it does the work for you. So you have big time savings on that point. Additionally, you can enrich the data with further data sets that are provided. And the time that you saved in the prep and blending, you can use for your analytics. So Alteryx comes with 60 tools for out-of-the-box statistical models based on R and Python code. But the good thing is, you as an Alteryx user, you don't have to understand the code because there is the no-code environment where Alteryx handles this. So you only need limited knowledge of that, and you don't need a data scientist for this. So this makes it really easy to use for the business users, as myself. So no BI and no IT expert. And the last step is to share the information, and you can share it to the Alteryx gallery over there, where you can share your workflows with your colleagues. You can share the results there, and you can also enable others to run your workflows and that they just exchange the data. Of course, you can visualize your data with Tableau, and you can also export your results into any other kind of database. I already mentioned to myself, very important point of Alteryx being code-free. So they have this powerful data and analytic workbench with more than 250 tools. And you can see it's basically those icons that are very intuitive to understand. So after a few hours in Alteryx, you know which tool does what. And so it makes it really easy to understand, and you don't need to use any coding if you don't want to, and if your use case is not too complex. But on the other hand, I really want to mention that Alteryx is also code-friendly, so you can also embed R, Python, and all other kinds of programming languages into it to just go one step further and really to go into the analytics. So now let's see how we set up our architecture to automate our reporting. So we're still doing our Tableau dashboard creation in Tableau Desktop. Then at Siemens, we have our own Tableau Server. So we upload the dashboards to the server, and we provide our users with the dashboards. So this is the old process, and there's not so much new to it. But now we come to the interesting part. So we now create our Alteryx workflows in the Alteryx Designer and upload them to our Siemens Alteryx server, where they run on a schedule, and now not twice a week, but every 3 hours. So every 3 hours we update our whole data set. And we do that by taking our new interface that was provided, the so-called PUMA Connect, we go into detail of that. So there we get our PUMA data, our productivity data. Then we need to merge it with some data from the past. We need to merge it with our targets, which are not part of the PUMA Connect output. And then the last step of the workflow is that Alteryx publishes the data sources or the data extracts directly onto our Tableau server. So this has the big advantage, we just talked about governance, that now our users can not only access the dashboards, but they can also access the data extracts, which are kind of certified by myself because I ran them. So now they can do additional reporting for their region, where they go into more specifics based on those data extracts. And this is really a big advantage for them. So let's look at the benefits that we see. Of course, there are the user benefits. So with the increased update frequency, we were able to really turn the dashboards from simple reporting to a working tool for everyone who uses the PUMA database. Maybe it's important to mention that the PUMA system itself doesn't have a visualization. So that's why we had to build something on top. And with now the frequent updates, our users are really using our visualization on top of the database to just see the results, see how they develop compared to their targets. And then on the other hand, there are the big benefits on my side. So before, it took myself like 2 to 4 hours to do one update of the whole data set, with going through the whole manual process. And if I did that twice a week, it added up to 8 to 4 hours, depending on into how many problems I ran, whether something with the code was going wrong. So those are the big time savings for myself, just by having the workflows automated and without any manual effort. So I can go on vacation, the workflows run on the server, and our users get the updates. Then, of course, it's much easier to maintain the Alteryx workflows than to maintain VBA code or any other kind of code, as you can imagine. So this is the other big advantage for me. And then I just learned yesterday that already another part of Siemens adopted my solution. So since the PUMA system works for whole Siemens, now my colleagues used my workflows and made some edits to it and use them in their departments or in their business unit to do the productivity reporting for them. So everything you produce is reusable because you can share the workflow with others, and this is really great, and I was really happy to hear that. So the effort that I put into it is now multiplying throughout the organization, and we can really leverage the benefits. Thank you. All right, now I'd like to go into some more technical details, and I want to talk about how we use Alteryx to do JSON parsing. So our PUMA Connect interface that I already mentioned, it's a REST API that was provided, so we weren't allowed to contact or to access the database directly because of data security and role handling. So that's why we got a REST API where the endpoint defines which data we can see. And yeah, then this endpoint gives us a nice data format that looks like this. So this is a JSON data format, and you can understand that getting from there to a table view and to our dashboards, it's quite a long way. So I'll take you on that journey. So this is a part of an Alteryx workflow, and we start on the left. It's just a simple text input tool where we insert the URL of our API endpoint. And then we have our download data tool, which we use to put a GET request with the additional header information to the REST API, and then we get the response where we still have the URL and some header information. But the important thing is the download data part, which basically contains the nice string format that we just saw. So now we throw away the URL and the headers because we don't need them anymore, and we run it through a JSON parse tool, which is provided by Alteryx. So now, in that data set, we have around 4,000 productivity actions, and this was now translated in more than 400,000 lines. So we know that each of the productivity actions has about 100 information to it. But this is still not the way that we need it. And we see with the dots there, our JSON file has different levels, so we have to split that up as well. That's why we use the text to columns tool to get the JSON name into the different parts that we need. And then we run some data cleansing over it and rename and select the tool or the columns that we need. And now we have a format where at least we have the JSON format separated into all the separate parts, and where we have all the actions identified by their unique ID. But we see that still we don't have them all in one row, but we have them in multiple rows. That's why I'll show you the whole Alteryx workflow. And yeah, I know it looks a bit overwhelming. That's why I want to break it down for you. So this is the part that we just looked at. So it's just a very small thing of the whole Alteryx workflow. This is where we download the action data. Additionally, we need to download some metadata where we have the usernames which are encoded and the business units. Then we join this stuff together, and then we have to do some untangling, I called it. And that basically means to bring all the information that we have in different rows into one row. Then we join all this together again. Then we run some calculations and quality checks, adjust some DI dates, because the DI dates define for our ramp up when the measure is going into the next DI. But to visualize it in Tableau, we always have to bring it down or back to the first day of the month, just to make it easier to handle. And then the last step is to export this. And now we have the data format that we need. So we have each action ID in one row, and we have all the information that we need attached to it. So this looks difficult, but actually it was not. And the thing with Alteryx is it's a lot of fun to do this. So I really enjoyed going through all of the steps and in the end to really get this result because it's really satisfying, and I wouldn't have known another way to do it with my limited IT knowledge. Okay, so the session description also mentioned something that we can do quick calculations and get notifications through emails, so I want to present that to you. So what we have here is a formula tool, and in those we can type formulas very similar to what you're used in Tableau. And I don't want to focus on the whole thing. I just want to, we're creating a new column, which is called service group. And there is some stuff going on, but I just want to focus on the case when we get an error. Because with that error, we know that something is going wrong with that action, and we have to do something. So the next tool that we use is a filter tool, and we just filter for the service group with the value error. And then we need to define an email text where we say, okay, with the measures that have an error, what do we want to do? So we send an email with, please check the measure with the action ID from a certain region. And then we hand this simply over to an email or to the email tool where we have to define the SMTP server. We have to find who is going to receive the email. This is going to be me. And on the bottom, we define the body. And the body is just the field that we defined in the tool before. So really easy to set up notifications. And if something's going wrong, I can then quickly go in. I could also build it that the measure responsible or owner is directly addressed, but usually if I fix it, it's faster and I don't have to bother anyone else. So one more important tool that I want to talk about is the Publish to Tableau Server tool, because all the Tableau users are probably interested in that one. So it does what the name says. We can publish data extracts directly to the Tableau server. And on top there, you see the normal icon. And below there, you see the Publish to Siemens Tableau server. Because in Siemens, we have a very high focus on data security. So, of course, we built around our Tableau server some additional security infrastructure, which is called Tableau Assist. And so we had to modify the publish or the standard published to Tableau Server tool for our specific case. And this was also quite easy, so I could do it myself with some help of the Tableau guys in Siemens, who are very supportive, so thanks for that. And so we could adjust this tool that it works with our infrastructure, and you can do that with all the Alteryx macros and tools. So what's behind them is basically additional workflows, and you can go in there, change them, and adjust them how you need them. So now, what I already mentioned, now it's possible to share our extracts with the colleagues, and that we build on consistent numbers for our reporting. And so on the Tableau server, it looks like this. So the name of the data extracts that we published, and the owner is the Alteryx user, because when we run this on the Alteryx server, we of course need to create a user for that, and that's why the owner of the data source is now the Alteryx server. Good. So let's talk a bit about Alteryx in Siemens. So it was interesting because Alteryx was really driven out of the business. So it started with some colleagues in Orlando who came across Alteryx and who thought, well, this is a tool that we really need because it helps us to create value and to create it fast. So it started like that, and now our central IT support is trying to catch up and to provide the infrastructure, but we are making big steps there. So we have our Siemens Alteryx server, which we use to schedule our workflows, to share our workflows, and also to allow others to run our workflows. So if I create a workflow, I can give it to, or give access to other people that they can run it whenever they need a data update, for example. Then an important thing is to set up the data connections, and there we also made big steps in the last few weeks. So we can now connect to our SAP HANA data lake, which is with all the different SAP systems that we are using, a really valuable asset for us because it combines the data from all the different SAP systems, and then we can go in with Alteryx and combine that data and join it with Excel files that are laying around on some network drives to really bring all the data together that we need. We have now an Alteryx community of around 300 members, and we are growing every day. So it's really nice to see that. And there comes this community thing in again. So it's really great to exchange workflows with other Siemens colleagues and to also get support when we have issues. So we were figuring out a lot in this community, and we're supporting each other. So the community is really an important part of that. And of course, we are using our existing Tableau server for the visualizations that we do build on the data preparation in Alteryx. So some benefits that I want to highlight, I reduced it to 3 because I think those are the most important ones. So what's really the most important thing is the repeatability of the workflows, that you can schedule them, and that by that you automate your data preparation jobs. And with the time that I saved, with the time that my colleagues saved, it's just amazing what we can do. And to take away those quite boring and stupid repetitive tasks opens up time for more value-adding tasks. And so this is also really appreciated if we just remove those boring tasks from the people, that they can work on the interesting stuff. So like for myself, the time that I'm not wasting on Excel anymore, I can use to build new workflows to support others and leverage Alteryx in our business. Then the second part, and I liked it that it was mentioned in the keynote as well, or highlighted, is the continuous transparency that we get through the automated workflows, where we always collect the latest data and show them transparently with Tableau, helps us to create this data culture. Because transparency creates accountability, and this accountability leads to more consciousness when it goes about making data entries, preparing data, and just putting the data into the systems. If this is all visible to everyone and you know your manager can look into it every day, you just take care that it's done properly. And then the last thing that I'd like to highlight about Alteryx is the possibility to use it as a self-service for business users, as I am. So most of our Alteryx community are non-IT people, so they are people from the business working in finance, working in quality management, working wherever, and they are utilizing Alteryx to get to their insights fast and to create reports fast in an automated way. So this is really helping us a lot. And yeah, little outlook to what we want to do. So our Alteryx server is still in a proof of concept phase, but we want to take this into production, open it to a wider crowd, that we can really use this sharing of workflows, enabling others to run your workflows. So we want to go more into that direction and also to develop analytical apps, which are basically Alteryx workflows where you can define some of the input parameters so that they can connect them to certain data sets that they want to analyze. Of course, we want to grow and train our user base for just optimal utilization of Alteryx, of our Alteryx server, and just to get most value out of it. And then the next step for us is really also to go into the predictive analytical capabilities of Alteryx. At the moment, we are still very much focused on the data preparation side, but Alteryx has to offer a lot more. And so we really want to step into this. And at Siemens, we have tons of data. So in our gas and power business, we have data of all our units that are operating at our customers. We can look into the ambient temperature, compare that with the power output and the efficiencies. So there is a potential to build tons of interesting models, and with Alteryx, we make it easily available not only for the data scientists to build those models, but for the business user who might have a new idea for an upgrade product, and he just wants to test his assumptions whether the increased megawatt output really benefits the customer in the way that he expects. So there is a lot more to come, I think. And with that, I'd like to close and go over to the Q&A, where you are open to ask your questions.